Geopolitics and Empire is joined by David Fleming, the founder of the COVID Assembly, the Together Declaration, and most recently, Not Our Future. He's doing a lot of great work. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, David.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Good to be on.
Great to have you on. And, we've been chatting for a while on the internets, and I think you first reached out to me. And again, you're doing a lot of great work, and I didn't know you were behind it initially. I'm just curious, how did you come across the Geopolitics and Empire podcast?
I forget, but it would have been, like a year and a half ago, maybe. And probably I was looking up someone I'd already been listening to on something else and found them on you. I don't know, or it was suggested, and I just looked at it. But it was probably somebody key, but I can't remember who it was. One of your, I don't know. I might be wrong, but Catherine Olsen-Fitz.
No, I haven't interviewed her. I've met her. I haven't interviewed her, but C.J. Hopkins, Robin Monotti, Piers Robinson, a lot of those folks early on. But they're all signed on with Not Our Future as well. So it's like one of those, yeah. And then I probably stuck with you because I liked what you did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for finding me. And when I have a guest on for the first time, especially dealing with the topic that we're dealing with today, which is one of the main topics, because I had a guest, Hannah Maria, that I met here in Mexico recently, and she used the term like a neo-pharmacy, sort of like a neo-imperialism. What's going on? And I really like that term, and so I wanted to get sort of your take, your perspective on what's going on this new form of imperialism we're being subjected to under the guise of health and environment, these so-called pandemics and so-called weather, right, climate. We're being subjected to the most tyrannical of control systems ever seen in the history of the world, a digital global gulag. How do you sort of interpret Project or Operation COVID, which began in 2020, and what has been going on?
Yeah, well, it was quite key, really, sort of March 2020. I mean, I'll give you a rough idea of where I come from. I mean, I am, we know that people have been trying to control the world since it started, forever. But we know also it sort of started ramping up around the turn of the last century, and then, all that stuff, the Federal Reserve and the institutions, the tax exempt institutions, etc., and they were sort of like Cecil Rhodes, his round table thing, and all that stuff. And then it seemed to sort of take off again. Well, obviously World War I, World War II, like the League of Nations, the UN, etc. But it sort of took off with a new sort of urgency at the end of the 60s with all the the Club of Rome and all that, and so from there is a direct line. It's like there's nothing broken. It's a very direct line from that point at the end of the 60s, where they had the I'm going to forget all sorts of key terms here, but the research for the limits to growth, and then that led to basically the plan to turn the climate as our enemy and people as their own enemy. So, and everything from then, like the 1992, the Rio summit, and then everything since then, basically. So it's basically Agenda 2021, and then Agenda 21, and then Agenda 2030. So it's been a very, very straight, like a linear process all the way through. You can see what they've been doing. So back in, and it didn't seem, so I wasn't, I knew sort of all about this, but I wasn't worried, because it always seemed to be the current government always seemed to be kicking the climate thing down the road a bit. So they were, probably every government that got in, they were just happy to be in. Then they said, let's kick that down the road a little bit. But then a lot of things happened at the same time in 2018. So the first thing that I became aware of was Extinction Rebellion. They said they were going to send people to prison. That's what they're going to start getting loads of volunteers going to prison. And that sort of just got me aware a bit. And then Greta Thunberg turned up in about August 2018. And then the midterm elections happened in the US that November, and Ocasio-Cortez sort of got in. And then all of a sudden, she had her little film that made her suddenly famous with her dancing thing. And then next second, she was talking about this Green New Deal. And she was talking about crazy things like building a bridge to Europe and no flights ever again anywhere else, anywhere, full stop. And that sort of shifted the Overton window. So that when people sort of started saying, oh, it won't be that bad, but it'll be, this, EVs, blah, 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 that the Overton window had moved a bit. And now they were talking about this, the Green New Deal. And then the next thing that happened was, I forget exactly when it was, but later on, early in 2019, Theresa May went on holiday to Italy, and she noticed that it's all rubbish, but she noticed that, this is her story, the glacier in the town she was staying in, that she'd stayed in 30 years earlier or something, previously, had shrunk, and she went, oh, the climate, we're all going to die. So she signed the UK up to net zero for 2050. And that was I thought, oh my God, that's it. It's not being kicked down the road anymore by the government. It's happening. And so I personally was trying to think what to do. But when COVID hit in March 2020, and they locked us down, I just knew that was it. They knew they'd got traction. They were going with the climate thing. It was going to happen. It wasn't being kicked down the road anymore. It was happening. Game on. So now they're getting very cocky, and they've decided to sort of whack us on the head with COVID. And so, I use the analogy sort of from the word go. If they're beating you over the head and you're on the ground, they're beating you. And then when they stop beating you and you stand up, you're just going to be happy to be in net zero, because you're not being beaten about the head anymore. So I figured that was what COVID was all about, was that they were beating us into the ground. And when we woke up and when they stopped hitting us, we'd just be happy to be in net zero. And pretty much that's sort of what's happening, really. So that's what I think of COVID. I think it was the final thing to sort of really whack us into shape and get us prepared for a long term, 100 years, 200 years of technocracy.
A quick shout out to our sponsors, which you can locate via the sponsor page on geopoliticsandempire.com, or whose links are included in every podcast description. I've tried privacy phones in the past, such as Silent Circle's Black Phone, which turned out to be a dud. The best and really only option so far is de-Googling your phone. Now, you can do it yourself, but I've never had the time to figure that out and simply got an Above phone. They sell de-Googled phones that come with a suite of software. They also provide support and a monthly Above privacy suite with many features such as a unique phone number, encryption, email, VPN, and so forth. If you're looking for a private phone, check out Above Phone. Make sure to click on the Above Phone link on geopoliticsandempire.com or via the podcast description so that we can enjoy a commission. Also, check out the Nomos Time Bank at nomos.net, which you can download in Spanish or English to your Apple or Google or de-Googled phone. Nomos allows people in your community to exchange services using time as a currency rather than fiat money. This will be one great way to survive in the coming algorithm ghetto. If you need health insurance, you can talk to my friend James Guzman of the Borderless blog, podcast, and health insurance. He offers free consultations. Simply schedule a time with him over at borderlesshealthinsurance.com. Finally, you can donate directly to Geopolitics and Empire, consult with me, the host, or become a member to join private monthly member Zoom calls where we shoot the breeze discussing world events.
You see, this is why I like to ask this question over and over again, because I think your explanation again. So, I've got the limits. I've got the original Limits to Growth book. You can see right here. They're behind me, those blue books from Club of Rome. But the way you just painted that picture, again, I think it's very unique. And some of those details right before COVID, 2018, 19, some of those developments, I hadn't put it together the way that you did. And it kind of crystallizes things as you kind of explained it, this trajectory that we're all familiar with,
And I like how you said a lot of us thought that as well. We learned about the New World Order. We thought, it was way off in the distance. They kept kicking the can down the road. Bush in the 1990s talking about NWO, the 2000s, the 2000 teens, and then bam, 2020. Like, it's actually happening. Like, no joke anymore. And yeah, it seems like, as you said, the climate technocratic thing is the main thing. They just needed a catalyst, which was the whole health issue. Catherine Austin Fitz actually gave a good interview that was posted yesterday that said they took all of our pension funds, and so that means that by default means they need to reduce the population or impoverish us, and bring the system down, and then bring in these controls. But let's talk about what they're doing next, which is trying to do this cashless society. And I call it algorithm ghetto. It's cashless society coupled with digital ID, which equals like social credit system. There was a clip floating around from China this week where a guy goes and says, look, it's so great. You use the vending machines, no more cash. The shops, no more cash. It just scans your face or your palm. And who could resist this? And then he goes on to say, it just scans your face, which is linked to your online account like PayPal. Well, less than a year ago, the Department of Homeland Security banned me for PayPal for no reason, just for being anti-war, just for a thought crime. So now I can't pay with my face for anything. And now I'm locked out of the system. I'm going to die. I'm going to starve to death. How is that cool? How is that cool? So if you want to talk a little bit about how you see, they're talking about central bank digital currencies. Every country is going to implement them. Here in Mexico, they're preparing in a year or two to roll out the digital peso. So how do you see these developments?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very wide topic, but obviously they want that control grid in place, and again, like Tony Blair, like in 1997 or whenever it was talking about it was probably 2001 too, around the start of the terrorism stuff. He wanted digital ID, so he was pushing for that. And it's 20 years later, he's still pushing them. But again, like I was saying earlier, things got kicked down the road. And whereas now you can see it's all they're all sort of circling, aren't they? They're getting things ready. They're really going for it. There's adverts in newspapers or on the government website in the UK advertising for like the digital currency, this like central bank digital currency, manager. The jobs are being advertised now. That it's actually happening. It's not just something they're talking about. A year or so ago, like Mark Carney or somebody was talking about looking into it and researching it and that sort of stuff. Now they're actually advertising for the jobs. So it's obviously happening. And I was encouraged maybe about a year ago when people, maybe like Catherine Austin Fitz, were talking about it. It's 5 years away, but I don't think it's 5 years away anymore. I think it's closer than that. And it's really ramping up. So, and they've been everything, like all the rumors and conspiracies are coming true. Like things like UBI. Now this manufactured energy prices. I mean, I don't know what your bills are in Mexico, but over here, I don't even know what my bill is because I've sort of ignored it. I'll get a horrible. I've literally no idea. But back in September, when Liz Truss was around briefly as Prime Minister, everybody was talking about, the bills are going to be so high. It's going to be like the same as your rent now. So it's like, it's not just an additional little bill. It's going to be like your rent. And so like businesses were going to close. People weren't going to be able to afford to heat their houses. So Liz Truss says, okay, we're going to pay X amount towards your bill, so you'll be fine. Now that sounded like great news, like, oh, wonderful. But it's problem, reaction, solution, isn't it? I mean, the problem was created by them in the first place. And now we're getting handouts from the government that we have to rely on the government. So that's basically a form of UBI, isn't it? It's like, it's an extra thing. We rely on the government. So you can just, and obviously furlough during COVID got everybody used to getting money for nothing. So you can just see how UBI will happen. I mean, there's loads of places trialing it as well. There's lots of trials going on. So, and the the next thing you know, you're going to have the bigger push, because CBDCs and UBI, that's instantly you're going to have a digital ID for that. So there's everything. There's digital ID, CBDCs, and universal basic income are going to be like all in one thing. But you can see how it's happening. That all the things being put in place, and like that's basically what they want. And then that's the trouble. You see, that's what I'm really panicking about, because that's end game. If we get there, it's all over for, I don't know, generations. So exactly, literally, I don't know. Well, I've got my plans, but we have to stop that happening, because obviously, people are waking up, but the idea is we just have to get more and more and more people to do it. I mean, you've seen, it's going to be interesting, because the immigration that's in the UK, but it's been a big thing for 5-10 years, but it's getting much more immediate now. But in Ireland, it's just starting to take off, and the Irish people are really pushing back against it. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because that's a sort of a people power thing. So will people react the same way to central bank digital currencies? But they probably won't, because it's not as an immediate. People don't understand it. They think, the average person, you see them talking, they think central bank digital currencies are just paying your bill with your phone. They just think it's e-money. They think it's just moving your money around. They don't realize that it's not money as they know it. It's a completely different thing. Like a weapon.
Yeah, you just gave me a thought, what I hadn't thought about before, with bringing in this mass migration. Even here in Latin America, from countries of lower, with more poverty, lower economic status, who are coming into Mexico and other places. The people, these migrants, people who don't have money, they're going to be much more likely to accept UBI and CBDCs, because they don't have anything. And then for their near-term survival, it will make sense, to sign up to this stuff. And just even here in Mexico, I was reading yesterday in the newspaper that they're rolling out UBI type projects, very disguised. They're starting with like the elderly, giving basically free money or benefits in digital cards. So it's happening in every single country. And I probably don't want to mention my energy bills, because they're so low. Being for now here in Mexico, it's like $5-10 a month, electricity and water. I always mention that. I'm still amazed it's so low, but I know in other parts of the world people are hurting. And yeah, I agree with everything that you're talking about, but going one step further, something you've been working on with your activism, the 15-minute city. So this is yet another aspect of all of this, and it's unbelievable. It's really shocking, and it's in Oxford. I've been reading now. Scotland is interested, Ireland, and again, I see these sorts of developments as well here in Mexico. I live in a Rockefeller funded smart city here in Guadalajara, Mexico. It's a resilient city. Our governor is a de facto globalist, and a lot of these politicians are captured. Samuel Garcia, who's of the same political party as my governor, who's up in Nuevo León, he was just in Davos meeting with Klaus Schwab. He's invited him to Nuevo León. He said he wants to get rid of cars in Nuevo León. He's tried to put laws where if you insult him online, this is a form of social credit, you go to jail for 36 hours and get a fine. So again, these politicians are being captured in every single country. And I don't care what people say. In Russia, it's the same thing. In China, Xi Jinping, I was just reading in foreign policy, he's got his own personal initiative, city, where he's rolling out a city brain data center where 90% of transport is going to be public transport, which means Xi Jinping's going to get rid of most people's cars. They're going to have, the Foreign Policy magazine said 5G powered autonomous vehicles. So Xi Jinping and Putin are not going to save us. And so your thoughts on these, what they're doing with these 15-minute cities?
Yeah, well, now when I first launched our Oxford event, which was to leaflet every single home in Oxford in one day, I said, strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with a 15-minute city. You know, like I had 2 young children at one point, and it would have been nice to work and walk to the park and everything within a 15-minute city. You know, there's nothing wrong with it per se. But if you're being forced at gunpoint to do it, you know, and obviously with what we know is the threat that we would be locked in it, we, you know, ultimately that's the problem. So I was attacked online by, you know, our own side in the UK for saying that, saying, oh, he's a controlled opposition. He wants 15-minute cities. But that was a Telegram, you know, reaction. And since then, I've spoken to dozens and dozens of people who all say the same as me. You know, yeah, it'd be great to walk around, you know, everything would be fine, you know. So strictly speaking, you know, I'll still go on the record as saying I've got nothing against 15-minute areas if it meant it was all nice and it was the public wanted it. It was designed by the public, blah, blah, you know, all that. Whereas obviously this isn't, because like I was just saying, the Club of Rome, Limits to Growth, UN, Agenda 30, Agenda 21, Paris Agreement, everything. So when Agenda 30 was, you know, well, 21 was rebranded as 2030. The next year, the UN announced published the UN new urbanization agenda or something like that, and in that it was the first, you know, seeds of smart cities. And then another year or two later, like 2017, it had already been in existence. I forget what it's called again, but like all the mayors, the big mayors of the country, of the world, you know, the mayors of the big cities have a group. It sounds spooky. It's like the covenant of mayors of, you know, it sounds a bit, you know, evil. And they got Arup, which is like a think tank, and the University of Leeds to make a report for the C40 cities. Oh yeah, it was C40 cities that existed already, but they sort of regrouped and published this report in 2019, which is that report that has their 2 types of targets: their ideal, their sort of reasonable target and their ideal target. And like let's look at the ideal targets. The ideal target for car ownership in their cities is 0. The ideal meat consumption in their cities is 0. And the ideal number of new items of clothing that you have per year is 3. You know, it's like a pair of shoes and 2 pairs of socks. That's it. You know, I forget the car one, but their reasonable target for meat consumption in their cities per person per month, I worked out, was 1/4 pounder a month. That's what they think is reasonable. You know, like that's their sort of boring target. So this is what they're all signing up to, all these cities. And then that was 2019. Then in 2020, Arup themselves started proposing, you know, writing reports on the website, having posts on the website about 15-minute cities. And that covenant of mayors again had part of their, you know, stuff was built. It's mid 2020, you know, just when lockdowns are happening, and Klaus Schwab is releasing his book. They say build back better with 15-minute cities. You know, so it's all linked in with all the Great Reset, the book that was published. Prince Charles launched it. They're talking about 15-minute cities. That's very same summer. And then the next year, 2021, Paris announces that they're going to be a 15-minute city. So that was like a big deal. And then 2022, Oxford, you know, do it, announced they're going to do it. So, but now, you know, if you look now, like literally every town, you know, like every day there's another town that's saying they're going to be a 15-minute city. So suddenly all this is happening all at the same time. Surprise, surprise. Now, if you look, Ben Pyle, who I know, who I work with a little bit, he did a good. I was attacked by the BBC Trending. It's called. It's like the BBC's disinformation spin-off. Like their stuff is still put on the BBC website, but it's done by this little team who specialize in attacking people like us, and they're funded. A lot of their, no, they're not funded directly. They work closely with a group called ISD, who are like a think tank who specialize in structuring how to attack people, for misinformation, that kind of thing. So the BBC Trending work closely with them. And that ISD, they're funded by Christopher Hone, who's a hedge fund billionaire from the UK. Now, he's a billionaire, and he puts all his money into his own private foundation called the CIFF, which is the Children's, Investment Fund, something like that. Officially, it's to help children around the world, but he wants to protect children from climate change and COVID, and he probably thinks children should live in 15-minute cities and all that kind of thing. So basically, he funds that group who help the BBC attack people like me, but at the same time he funds the C40 cities and UK 100. And UK 100 is an organisation, a charitable organisation, which helps local councils in the UK. Like the UK is comprised of 364 local councils, and so each of those has about 200,000 people in it. And so the UK 100 is signing up all the councils in the country. They've got 100 now. Obviously they're called UK 100, and they've got 100, but I assume they still want to get 364. But they're signing them up to reach net zero. So a council will, publish the fact that, we're aiming for net zero by 2030 or 2040 or whatever. And so this UK 100, they actually have staff who go into the councils and sit down, in an office, and they have a desk, and they work with the council to ensure they are on track to do net zero. So part of that race to net zero for these councils is obviously to set up these 15-minute cities. Because everybody who has announced that they're doing a 15-minute city, or they plan doing it, in the near future, they're already signed up to this UK 100 thing. So it's obviously, part of the whole plan. So it's again, you can see exactly step by step, the plan is in place, and it's been implemented and executed, and it's happening. And so you can't deny it. I mean, Oxford, we announced that we were going to leaflet every home in Oxford with our leaflet. And the thing is, we won't be just talking about, it's inconvenient and it's bad. We're talking about Agenda 30 and climate hoax, and we're sort of going everything. We want the people to know the truth, not dressed up, and sugar coated. So we announced we were doing that. So Oxfordshire Council immediately released a video saying that, people are, because there's conspiracy theories out there, this is all rubbish. It's just for traffic, we're only trying to cure the traffic problems. But the guy, Councillor Enright, who is in charge of all this, he's in charge of transport, he's the person at the front of this. He actually did mention 15-minute cities, and he did mention the climate, in early days before he knew it was a big, problem. So they are on record as saying that it is 15-minute cities and it's for the climate. But now they're just saying, no, it's only for traffic, this is a conspiracy. So again, there's a direct line you can see from Club of Rome, limits of growth, Agenda 30, and 15-minute cities. It's all a thing. So the fact that these are all springing up isn't a coincidence. It's exactly the same as, everything else, COVID, everything. It's like it's planned, and they're making it happen, and they're doing a fairly good job so far. So it's not an organic thing that's just sprung up, thinking, this would be really nice to live 15 minutes from everything. Because there's probably hundreds of, or even thousands of 15-minute cities around the world already by accident, or maybe Sweden have done some deliberately, that kind of thing. And again, 15-minute cities could be a 15-minute city for one person, but their next door neighbour it mightn't be, because one person might have everything they want, and the other has to go into London to work and stuff. So again, it's not that. It's literally they want to have us all in these zones. And probably they do want to get everything for us in there eventually, over 20 years, so that when they do lock us in, we're not starving, and so we're not going to get. Because that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people have said, they're going to starve us, the food shortages. But I never thought that, because then people would really rebel, wouldn't they? But if there's food shortages, then you have to turn to the government for, supplies. Then you're relying on the government again. It's a bit like UBI. So that's what I think. I don't think they're going to make life terrible for us because
I think initially, though, later it would become like a Soviet system where you got to wait in a huge line for hours to get your food, and then your only option is the food that they give you with who knows what they're putting in it. You won't have the option to eat organic. And I would agree with you what you said earlier, that, and I've had this philosophy as a young man that there's how would you say, like a thoughtful way when it comes to the environment. Like, yes, we should take care of the environment, not pollute the water, take care of the trees, all of this stuff. But that's completely divorced from this whole CO2 climate man-made warming thing. And I would agree that, having a naturally, organically developed and thought out 15-minute city optional for people who want to live in there. Maybe at some point you'll want to leave, you'll want to go live in a more rural area. That's fine. But what we're talking about, they're selling it as it's a completely different thing. It's a prison. It's basically a prison. You'll be locked in. And then I'm reading about the Oxford cities where you can only leave 100 times a year. And then and in many cities, like where I live, family and friends live way on the other side of the city. And so if they implemented where I am here, I would not be able to see, let's say my mother or father or friends or family after 100 trips. And then they're putting these obstacles. So you can't go out like in the Oxford. And then I read today that they're saying for now they're going to remove some of those obstacles on the streets. And that the council members are saying they'll have a camera which will fine you. I mean, it's the same principle. So if we're in a cashless system and you go for your 101st visit to your mom, the camera will fine you. It could be an ungodly amount. And then, they just take away all of your savings just because you're visiting your mother. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, any further thoughts?
Yeah, well, go on the Oxford thing. It's like a wheel, a center and then spokes. And you're not allowed to go from one of the wedges into another wedge. It could be the wedge right next to it. So it could be a 2-mile trip, but you're not allowed to do it. You have to go out to the edge of town, around a ring road, which is going to be busy. It's already busy now. It's going to be even more busy then, because everybody have to do it. And then back in again. So what could be a 10-minute quick trip around the leafy suburbs could be an hour on a busy motorway. So first of all, it's not environmentally friendly, is it? So that's straight away a giveaway that they don't want us to have cars. So they don't want us to make trips. It's not that they're trying to reduce the traffic inside. So, but it's sort of worse because it's 100 days a year. But like a lot of families have built up their whole life. Like you could have a divorced couple with kids and they're going back and forward 2 or 3 times a day. And now they can't do that, or, because that doesn't count with your hundreds. Like 100, that's only like once every 3 days. What if you want to do 2 trips a day? Or you to take your kids to school, drop your kids to your parents after school, and all that clubs, going to clubs, friends' houses, all that sort of stuff. It's all going to disappear. There'll be no sort of spontaneity. You won't have like just do something on the spur of the moment with some friends, go to the park to play ball, which is 15-minute drive away. Whereas you won't do it if it's an hour and a half on a busy motorway. So it's just going to ruin daily life. But it already is, because this is for the whole of Oxford. But there's already what you were talking about earlier with the obstacles. There's already low traffic neighbourhoods all over England, London, but Oxford has them as well. And so that Oxford has, I forget, but like about 5 or 6 local low traffic neighbourhoods, which is the same principle. They've blocked off roads that you're not allowed to go down unless you've got a permit. And if you don't have a permit, you have to go onto a bigger road and go around it. So the idea is officially that it makes the area that's controlled nicer to live in. It's like safer for cyclists or whatever, or it's not as noisy. But it's decimating local businesses, and it's having the same effect that, I just mentioned about, the quality of life, just spontaneity or helping family and all that kind of stuff. So it is, but it was like a trial, just, and now they've said, let's do it everywhere. And it'll just happen, everywhere. But it's It's like anti-human, basically, you know. And the 100 days thing, that's if I may be wrong, I keep forgetting, but that's per household. So if you've got, like, you know, 2-car family, you know, you've only got 50 days each. And what's to say they, you know, there's a news report or a think tank says, oh, the, you know, climate in Oxfordshire needs to be, you know, we need to fight it even more, so we'll reduce it to 50 days, you know, 30 days. And then the day, like when lockdown, you know, if there was another COVID lockdown, like if the same thing happened again, we'd they can just instantly enforce and say, like, no days, right, that's it, bump, you know, at this stage. And then who knows what it's going to be like in 10, 20 years time.
I got a taste of it living in the former Soviet Union in Kazakhstan when all of this happened in 2020, and most people live in these apartment complexes. I mean, some people have homes in you know, other parts of Kazakhstan, but you don't have as much freedom, especially when you live in an apartment complex. And they locked us down. It was like literally dystopia. I feel like this is what it would be like. They gave us a card, the Kazakh government authorities, and the card said that you can only leave your home, your abode, every other day. So one day, you cannot exit your apartment at all. It's crazy. Like, what if you have a health issue and you get some fresh air? You can't leave. And then the next day, only one person with the card from the household may leave, may exit the apartment complex and go to the pharmacy, bank, or supermarket to buy food. I mean, what about other stuff? Like, my kid needed shoes. You know, my kid was growing. We literally didn't have shoes. And it's like wintertime in Kazakhstan. Like, what the heck? Can't go buy shoes. She's barefoot in minus 30 degrees. Like, and you're taking care of my health. We had to, like, somehow find on Instagram someone selling, a Kazakh person selling shoes on Instagram, and they came to our house with a bag full of shoes so we could find a pair for our kids. Like, this is total Kafka-esque insanity. Then this is what they want. And then there were police patrols. There were, like, in 3 Kazakh police walking around all the apartment complexes in the night. The cops would come blaring with the lights and with the loudspeakers telling everyone to get back in the apartments. I'm like, this was total, like, dystopian sci-fi horror that I was living. And it kind of be like what you're talking about. Like, one day you can't leave, and then the other, they can easily say 50 days or 25 days. They can just, if we just accept this idea, we're toast, and then they can just adjust the barometer. I did want to ask you about, and I like the work that you're doing. You're out on the street, putting these pamphlets out physically into people's hands. If you want to let us know, what are your principal initiatives? Is it now currently not our future? And so tell us about what you're doing, and then is there any way people can help or support your activism?
Yeah, well, like, because I was saying, when I wanted to do something about climate, when Theresa May signed us up to net zero and all that, I decided that the only way to do it was to get information to the public. So I was just thinking, literally every home in the country would get a leaflet in the door, like ideally every week, on the topic, reacting to what the government was saying, because everything else is controlled, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I was attacked by Christopher Hone, basically, he's a billionaire. But yesterday, I'm going to ramble now. Yesterday, I got a right to reply from a journalist from a group called Open Democracy. Now, they did me a year ago for COVID-19 assembly stuff, with Claire Craig and Francis Hoare.
I think they're financed as well, Open Democracy, probably by the usual suspects like Soros.
Oh, no, I know exactly who. I can tell you now, because that's my whole point, is so they get £3 million a year. That's their budget. That's how much funding they get. And it's funded, most of it, it's all funded by the usual suspects. I mean, 75% of it comes from Alan Clark from Oak Foundation, the Omidyars, and George Soros, basically. Then they get some money from the Ford Foundation, some money from Rockefellers, and some money from other families who I assume are just the same, but I didn't bother researching them. But so they get 75% of the money comes from those 3 key people, 3 billionaires. who all want to. Basically, they're doing the job. They're attacking people like me to prevent these billionaires. I was just thinking, literally today, these billionaires, okay, they're billionaires, but maybe they don't want to spend their money on this, but they could be getting their money from black ops, because the 21 trillion that disappeared that Catherine Austin Fitz says, there's so much money offshore under black ops, they can do whatever they want. So they might give the Omidyars 2 billion to give out to people. It's like money laundering. And they say, okay, yeah, that suits me. But either way, so the Omidyars, that's what my point was. They're particularly interested in local news, which is quite worrying, because local people are turning away from, the mainstream media, and they're looking more locally. So they want to sort of double down and start influencing local media, because people might start learning the truth, especially like for coming up to elections and stuff. So basically, my idea had always been to get the information out to the public, on the doorsteps, in their houses. In an ideal world, every week we'd be doing something, some topic like CBDCs, UBI, net zero, everything. And so when I set up COVID-19 Assembly, if you ever look at my website for it, you'll see I've got these graphics done for the website, and they're all about people out in the street talking to people, or exhibitions, getting the information to the public. And that's what I wanted to do with Together. When we set Together up, I wanted Together to be basically what Not Our Future is, but the other people involved didn't want to go beyond vaccine passports at the time, whereas I wanted to get into the whole sort of anti-Agenda 30 thing. So that's basically what we're doing. We're just getting the information out there. Now, we used 15-minute cities as an example of what we can do. We can go out and deliver leaflets. But what I want to do is I just want to do it all over the world. I want everybody, like every town in the world, to have a team who could go out. We'd release a PDF of a new leaflet, and then people would get it printed. They might know a printer locally who could do the print for free, or just divvy it up and print a few each, anything, and just get it out there. Like every week, like we could have fixed things every couple of weeks, but we could have something where we react to something that's going on this week. So that's what I want Not Our Future to be. But also on top of that, we do want to start getting a bit more active. So as people sign up to the idea and get involved, the only way we're going to stop all this is by taking some sort of direct action. Okay, it's a big, crazy goal, but all our representative politicians are, corrupt, basically, or afraid to speak out. Either way, it's just as bad. And they're being influenced from above, and they're giving all our power and money up that way. And we just need to cut that off somehow. And however we do it, we have to do it. And I think we have to do it quite quickly, I don't know. There's, the US and UK elections are coming up in 2 years' time. And, if they go the wrong way, we've got another 4 or 5 years of hell. And who knows what can happen in that time. So, if people want to help, just come to notourfuture.org and see what we're promoting that week. I do want to launch something in the next week or two on that sort of political thing, to try and do something. I've got a few ideas in mind of how to sort of spark a bit of interest in people stopping, the blob from affecting us.
Yeah, it's. As you said, yeah, it's the hour is late. Many people I talk to, it's obvious they're coming hard and fast, and our time is really running out. And I agree with you. Like, I resist this with every fiber of my being and every which way that I can. But at the same time, I have a more doomier outlook. I'm fighting to the death, willing to face economic ruin and even death. But it's like that Sparta, movie 300 thing, where you fight regardless of what the outcome will be. But at the same time, what you alluded to earlier, like you had plans, and I would like to have like a sort of plan B to fall back on, where if this stuff advances, I do still have to, if we do lose or battles going forward, how do we survive within such a dystopian system? And there's a lot of people. Some of them are plan Bs. Some, they've run for the hills already, built farms, or starting local networks, barter networks, time banks, like my sponsor Nomo's time bank, or stuff like this. And do you have any thoughts on sort of parallel structures? And some people say this is useless, but in Soviet times, there were parallel structures and societies as forms of surviving, these sorts of tyrannies. What are your thoughts on ways to prepare and survive in such systems?
Yeah, well, it's sort of two things. I mean, I sort of want to keep fighting until the last second, and then if we lose, definitely, like if CBDCs, UBI, and digital IDs come in together, linked to vaccines and stuff, that's sort of the end of that round, and then the game changes. And after that, I think probably more people would go, "Oh my God, you were right," and then we'd have to work on a sort of more sort of covert networking things to fight. So, and I don't know. I haven't imagined how that would go yet, because I'm still focused on this plan, and I don't have any plans to do anything myself because I don't have any resources. I mean, building alternative ways. I mean, that's good in that, like alternative health systems and stuff. Because like Tess Laurie, who's signed up with us, she's been promoting like her World Council for Health. She wants to have an alternative NHS, a different health system, and because the NHS before it was the NHS, like a big centralized system, it was all local hospitals. So a local hospital would be paid for by wealthy benefactors or unions, or people pay subscriptions. And it would be a functioning hospital, it'd work. There was nothing wrong with it. So she's rolling out a system like that, so people would do that themselves. And I mean, so if we, meanwhile, we're trying to do the fight, but if we were building up alternative systems, I'm linked to another, like Richard Werner. He's got
he's great, yeah.
He's like a chairman and an advisor to a new startup which is all about local banking, so it'd be like a network of local banks, and they just do what banks used to do, like in the old days, like they give loans to local people, local businessmen, to build houses, to build businesses, and that's what banking was about in those days. I mean, banking isn't anything like banking back in those days. So, and if they work and they're successful, and then you can point to them and you can say, so instead of like crazy ideas, you actually say to somebody, "Oh no, there is a thing like that, and it does work, and these people say it's much better." So people can go to it, and then maybe eventually we can just let the others die off, wither away because no one uses them anymore. So yeah, and we could also do the same with alternative governments. So we could set up an alternative government which has no power, but I'm just thinking off the top of my head, just show what decisions we would make with this current things happening, and people say, "Oh yeah, that sounds like a very sensible idea. It's a pity you're not in power," that kind of thing. And then say, "Well, we could be in power if you got behind us," So rather than just talk, you actually make something and then show people that it's better, and then maybe it can take over from the existing thing, and then that would all play in to any other changes that we wanted to make, like changes to government and things. But yeah, so. Yeah, well, I mean, I hope I answered your question, but the game will change when we lose, and I don't know what we'll do, but it'll probably be different than what we're trying to do now. Which we're trying to use the things we have control of now to take back control from the powers that be. But see what happens later.
Yeah, and I agree with what you say. The number one weapon is compliance, and we just have to pull in large numbers, pull our money from these companies, disengage even from local governments, wherever you are, here in Mexico or UK, Europe, USA, Australia. Stop complying with them and getting together with local people and doing other stuff. I mean, that will put political pressure on the governments. And I saw a clip yesterday, someone who was successful in some political action in the US who said the only thing that works is political pressure on the politicians, and then enough people do it, they will stop or change or fail. And so that's our first, this is stage one. This is what we do, not complying. That doesn't work, as you said. We're going to advance to stage two. It's going to be a whole new ball game. So yeah, interesting times. Any final then thought for us as well? All of the links will be in the description, but again, any final thoughts and best website for people to go to?
Well, our website's notourfuture.org. But yeah, no, I mean, we just have to keep getting the information out to the people, and the people have to, just start to take part. I mean, one final thought, that this is the key thing. I spent the last year building up Not Our Future and getting it ready for launch and everything. But one thing one person said to me was, he just kept going on about the word attention. Like, it's where your attention is. That's what's, he's into, like, the Zen Buddhism and stuff, but he was just talking about attention. And he said it so often that it went into my head, And then I thought, well, hang on, what it is about attention. I mean, that sort of indirectly was what I was always doing, but just knowing that word. But it's attention. Now, Not Our Future, the word not, lots of people said, oh, that's a negative word, And, well, it's just the negative times, I mean, if you're called la, 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 let's have a nice future, people just won't even think about it. The not gets people's attention. They say, what do you mean not our future? And then you just explain that. I didn't explain that the whole point of Not Our Future is that there's that dystopian future that's been built for us right now. And if we don't do anything, it'll happen. And we want to say that's not our future. And we're going to do the other thing, whatever it is. We're not laying out what it is, because that would make us fascists as well. So, but humanity can decide for themselves, not this little clique of, technocrats and psychopaths. So that's what the Not in Not Our Future is all about, is to focus people's attention and make them think, oh, hang on. Yeah, we don't want that. We want this, or anything but that. It's just, and I liken it also to, people say, oh, don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. But it's like, if you're in a boxing match, like world heavyweight boxing, you're not thinking about the prize. If you're thinking about the prize, you're not going to win. You're thinking about that person right in front of you, and you have to hit them. So your attention's on the negative, and the positive will come once you've dealt with that. So, I mean, that's sort of the way I look at it. And,
that's actually been my philosophy, and some people mistake it as a black pill, but it's like, no, we're raising the alarm to get people's attention to do something. The situation is bad. Wake up, the neighbor's house is on fire, and we got to deal with this imminent threat. And if we don't, we're screwed. And so no more, La La Land, no more, as you said, utopia, our future, because people won't care. They'll think, oh, okay, things are going to pan out. No, it's like danger. And so, all right, great chat, great work you're doing. And again, I'm going to include all of your links in the description, and I hope people follow and support your initiatives, Not Our Future, and COVID Assembly and other stuff. And thank you for being on Geopolitics and Empire, David.
No, it was great. Thanks a million.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up for the free email list that goes out with each podcast and every weekend with a collection of news headlines. The newsletter and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's nearly impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently takes down our videos with strikes. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit and Twitter take down posts, and after the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, Geopolitics and Empire is in dire need of funding to continue. You can leave a donation, purchase a consultation with the host, or become a member to receive additional benefits. We also produce a weekly broadcast called Dissident Thinker for members and Rockfin subscribers only. We will continue to fight the good fight come hell or high water. Thank you for listening.